My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 29 years old, and I live in Portland. 3 years ago, I thought my husband's family had finally accepted me, until one single night showed me exactly where I stood. If you had told me back then that the people I called family would sit in a room I paid for and pretend I didn't exist, I would have laughed. But that's exactly what happened. And what I did after? That's the part that still shocks people when I tell them. When I married Daniel, I thought I'd finally found the family I always wanted. My own parents passed when I was young, and I grew up bouncing between relatives who never quite had room for me. So when Daniel's mother, Diane, hugged me at our engagement dinner and said, "Welcome to the family," I believed her. I threw myself into every holiday, every birthday, every small gesture. I ran a nonprofit foundation that supported children's hospitals, and I was proud of the life I'd built, quietly, on my own terms, without ever needing anyone's approval. But slowly, I started noticing things. Diane would introduce Daniel's sister, Melissa, as the successful one, and me as Daniel's wife, who does some charity thing. At family dinners, my work was mentioned in passing, if at all. I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't in this family for recognition. But I had no idea how far that dismissal would go. My foundation had been planning its biggest event of the year, a charity gala to fund a new pediatric wing at a Portland hospital. 8 months of work. I sent the invitation to Daniel's entire family myself, handwritten, weeks in advance. Diane RSVP'd yes. Melissa RSVP'd yes. Even Daniel's father confirmed. I was so happy that night was finally coming. 2 days before the gala, I overheard Diane on the phone with Melissa. She said, "We don't actually have to go to Claire's little dinner thing, do we? Your cousin's engagement party is that same night, and that's where the real people will be." My stomach dropped. That's when everything changed. Not because of anger, but because I finally saw clearly what I had refused to see for years. I sat in my car outside their house for 20 minutes before I could drive home. I wasn't crying because they were skipping an event. I was crying because for 3 years I had been trying to earn a seat at a table where I was never actually wanted. I called my best friend Sarah and just said, "They're not coming. They never really saw me." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Claire, they don't know who's actually in that room." That's when I remembered something I had never told Daniel's family. The pediatric wing this gala was funding, the lead donor, the person who had quietly committed the largest single contribution in the foundation's history, wasn't some anonymous board member. It was me. I had used part of my own inheritance, money from my late parents that I'd never touched, never needed to explain to anyone. The hospital board knew. The mayor's office knew. Daniel's family had no idea their little charity dinner was being headlined by the very person they were choosing to skip. I want to be clear. I never planned this as revenge. I planned it as the truth, finally being spoken out loud. I called the event coordinator and asked for one small change to the program. Instead of listing the lead donor as anonymous, as I'd originally requested out of humility, I asked that my name be read aloud during the keynote, along with a short thank you from the hospital's chief pediatric surgeon. Then I did something I'd never done before. I posted the RSVP list, donors, hospital board, city officials, publicly on the foundation's event page, as many galas do for transparency. Melissa's engagement party had exactly 40 guests. My gala had 300, including 2 local news stations covering the new pediatric wing. The night before the gala, Daniel asked if I was nervous. I told him I was, but not for the reason he thought. I hadn't told him about the donor reveal either. Some part of me needed his family to hear it the same way everyone else would. Live, in the room, in real time. I laid out my dress, reviewed my short remarks one final time, and reminded myself, I wasn't doing this to hurt anyone. I was doing this because I was done shrinking myself to fit into a family that never made room for me in the first place. The gala night arrived. 300 guests, local news cameras near the entrance. Daniel stood beside me, proud, unaware of what was coming. Diane and Melissa were, of course, at the engagement party across town. Midway through the evening, the hospital's chief surgeon took the stage. He thanked the sponsors, the volunteers, and then said, "Tonight, I want to recognize the person whose generosity made this pediatric wing possible. Someone who asked to stay anonymous for years, but who I convinced to finally take this moment. Please join me in thanking Claire Bennett." The room stood. Cameras flashed. Daniel turned to me, stunned, mouthing, "That's you?" I simply nodded, my hands shaking, tears in my eyes. Not from sadness this time, but from finally being seen. By morning, the story was picked up by 2 local news outlets. Local Woman's Quiet Donation Fund's New Children's Hospital Wing. Melissa's phone, apparently, would not stop buzzing. Diane called the next day, her voice completely different from the woman who once called my work some charity thing. She said she had no idea and asked why I'd never told them. I told her the truth. I did tell them. I invited them. They chose an engagement party instead. She had nothing to say to that. Melissa sent a long text apologizing, saying she felt embarrassed in front of her own fiancé's family once the story came out. Daniel, for his part, was quiet in the car ride home that night. Not angry with me, but clearly replaying every dismissive comment his mother had made about me over the years. Things didn't explode into some dramatic family war. Something smaller and more honest happened instead. Diane started asking about my foundation. Melissa started showing up to events, actually present instead of politely tolerating them. Not because they suddenly loved me more, but because they finally understood I wasn't someone who needed their approval to matter. Looking back, I don't regret staying quiet for as long as I did. I think some of us spend years trying to prove our worth to people who were never going to see it, until the moment truth speaks for itself. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need an argument. I just needed one room, one truth, and enough courage to stop hiding. If there's one thing I'd want anyone watching this to take away, it's this. You don't have to shrink yourself to be loved by people who overlook you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply keep building your life quietly, because the truth, when it finally comes out, doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to be heard.